Hello, my lovely Wolfpack, and welcome to the Lone Wolf Show, brought to you by Wolfpack Media, the most entertaining place on YouTube for your news and commentary. I'm your host, Justin Huseman, founder and news contributor. We have a great show today, and I can't wait to get started. But before we do, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. Join the pack today. All right, so early this morning, at least 9 people are dead and more than 70 injured in Kiev after Russia carried out a devastating air attack against Ukraine, with Kharkiv and other cities also targeted in the attack. Now, we do have this post from President Trump from his Truth Social account. Let's see what he had to say in response to this attack. He says, "I am not happy with the Russian strikes on Kiev. Not necessary and very bad timing. Vladimir, stop. 5,000 soldiers a week are dying. Let's get the peace deal done." No, I can't argue with President Trump on this. This is absolutely ridiculous that we're still here, especially considering peace talks have been transpiring the past couple of weeks. But let's just get straight into the news here. We have this article from NBC News. Vladimir, stop, says Trump as Putin launches worst attack on Ukraine in months. It says, for Ukraine and its supporters, the attack symbolized the hypocrisy of Russia's position. The U.S. president described the bombardment as not necessary and very bad timing. Yeah, at least we read what he had to say already. Let's see what the news actually says. Okay. Russia overnight Thursday. Was it overnight Thursday? Because today's Thursday. Russia overnight Thursday launched one of the most, I'm guessing it's the early morning Thursday is what it should say. Ha, you guys don't know how to write articles. Launched one of the most devastating bombardments on Ukraine's major cities since the war began, killing at least, and now, I guess I got new news. I guess it's saying now it's at least 12 people are dead. Hours after President Donald Trump said he believed he had struck deals with both sides to end the war. After the attacks, Trump wrote, Vladimir, stop. Yeah, we read that already on his Truth Social, blah, 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 da, 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 da. When asked by a reporter outside the White House later on Thursday about whether he thought Putin would listen to him on stopping strikes on Ukraine, Trump responded, I do, yeah. Well, let's hope so, Mr. President. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky announced he was cutting short a trip to South Africa and returning home immediately to deal with the destruction in his country. Russia continues to kill people and avoid tough pressure and accountability for this, he said Thursday. Unfortunately, there is a lot of destruction. Rescue operations are ongoing. The rubble of buildings is being cleared. The capital, Kiev, was pummeled with 70 missiles, 48 of which were shot down, and 140 drones, 64 of those were shot down. Ukraine's Air Force said it was a particularly horrible and loud night. Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andrei Sabaiha, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, said in a statement, the death toll has risen to 12, according to Ukrainian officials, so this must have been an updated article compared to what I read earlier on this morning. They recovered 2 bodies from under the rubble, another 90 people, so now it's gone from 70 to 90 people were injured. Wow, Google really needs to update its shit, because according to this article, it's 12 people dead and 90 injured. Bombs also fell in the country's second city of Kharkiv, where Mayor Ihor Terekhov, I hope I'm pronouncing that right as well, urged residents to be careful, quote unquote. Yevhenia Bolivia. God, I cannot pronounce names. I got to get better at pronouncing names for this job I've taken on. 23, and interpreter and event manager in Kiev told NBC News that the overnight explosion shook her walls and slammed the doors shut in her apartment, sending her and other panicked residents into the corridor as more missiles fell. Outside, the air was filled with smoke and ash, and the streets scattered with broken glass. Sabolivia ran to take shelter at a nearby metro station, which she said was so full of people it was like the first days of the full-scale invasion. The attacks follow the latest conflicting and often contradictory statements in the U.S. brokered peace talks. On Wednesday, Trump said in the Oval Office that I think we have a deal with both sides before suggesting that an agreement with Ukraine was still pending. Yeah, see, it seems like it's really the Ukraine side of this that's causing these peace deals to not go through. Anyway, I'll read on. I thought it might be easier to deal with Zelensky, he said. So far, it's been harder. Yeah, see, it seems like Zelensky's the antagonizer of this war at this point. Earlier in the day, Trump launched his latest criticism of Zelensky on Truth Social, accusing his Ukrainian counterpart of making inflammatory statements, a reference to a Wall Street Journal interview in which Zelensky pushed back on Washington's peace plan and said of a deal with Zelensky needs to get it done. The White House is trying to push Ukraine into accepting a deal with Russia despite setting terms that Kiev deems deeply unfavorable. High-level talks in the United Kingdom disintegrated earlier this week after Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff pulled out, leaving lower-level ministers to meet instead. Trump's special envoy for Ukraine and Russia, retired Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg, who was part of the talks, told NBC News that talks in London yesterday were candid, constructive, and productive. While visiting South Africa, Zelensky told a news conference that a document drafted at the talks is on President Trump's table. He again lamented that we do not see strong pressure on Russia in new sanctions for its aggression on Thursday. Woodcock is set to travel to Moscow this week to speak with President Vladimir Putin about the talks, the White House said Thursday. Plane spotters using the website Flight Radar 24 said they had tracked a plane matching one previously used by the envoy flying from Paris to Moscow overnight. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov did not mention Thursday's attacks in his morning briefing with journalists. No shit. Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Sakharova, I can't pronounce your weird Russian names, said that Kiev's inability to negotiate is becoming increasingly obvious. The Russian Ministry of Defense said it had shot down 87 Ukrainian drones overnight, which could be, so these strikes in Kiev might be retaliatory. Gouging Russian support for the war is difficult given the brutality with which Putin's regime silences dissent and political opposition. Even so, running survey by Moscow's Levada Center pollster shows the overwhelming majority, 80% as of February, support the invasion in some capacity. Canvassing opinion on the street of Moscow showed some differences of opinion. No deals, let them get what they deserve, said, who cares, some 66-year-old retiree. And then another person said she was in favor of ceasefire because so many people are suffering. Both declined to give their last names amid Russia's repressive atmosphere, yeah. For Ukrainians and their supporters abroad, Thursday's attack symbolized the hypocrisy of Russia's position. Putin continues to make extreme demands. His conditions for a deal essentially resemble a Ukrainian surrender, while continuing to prosecute the invasion he launched 3 years ago. Zelensky and members of his government say they will never accept Russian control over Crimea, a key demand of the Kremlin's. Yesterday, Russian maximalist demands for Ukraine to withdraw from its regions, combined with these brutal strikes, show that Russia, not Ukraine, is the obstacle to peace. The Ukrainian foreign minister said Moscow, not Kiev, is where pressure should be applied. Yeah, okay, sure, dude, but you guys are the one, like, you're not gonna get Crimea back, guys. Like, we need to fucking just accept that, um, the Crimea for sure, considering Russia has a naval base there, you're not getting it back. And I would even argue that some of the areas in the Donbass, you're not getting back, dude. Anything that Russia's taken and is holding, you're not getting it back, dude. You have to accept that you're losing these regions to Russia, and in order for people to stop being killed, um you need to negotiate this peace deal. You need to admit defeat, bro. Like you're not gonna win against a superpower like Russia. Like, I don't know, man. I have a lot of pretty pretty let's just say passionate opinions about the Russia-Ukraine war, especially as it pertains to us here in the US. Now, considering these two countries just had peace talks on Tuesday, they talked about it a little bit there on in the article. But these particular attacks kind of show that the peace talks didn't seem to go very well. At least that's what how it seems to me. I think Ukrainian President Zelensky is he's a goddamn fool, dude. He's a fool. He's an absolute fool. Like, at this point, all I can assume from this president is that, like, he's getting something out of, like, having this war keep continue. Now, if he doesn't make a deal now, like right now, I think there's a good chance that Russia is just going to go in and absolutely crush Ukraine. And in the meantime, the Ukrainian people suffer while also Zelensky and his administration sit back and get rich. These people, like, have bought like $1 million mansions and shit, dude. Like, I don't know, but it seems the cash cow that the United States has become under the Biden administration in regards to Ukraine, it might be over. In these, I believe it was Secretary of State Marco Rubio who said the other day that if peace talks don't like happen within the next couple weeks, then the U.S. is going to pull out of this, and I don't see why we haven't pulled out of it in the first place. It sucks. I really was hoping that President Trump was going to be able to end this war relatively quickly, but I know that Vladimir Putin's being pretty stubborn about it, but Zelensky, for sure, in this article, is obviously NBC article. Obviously, they're on the Ukrainian side of the things. They're talking about how it's all Putin's fault. It's all Russia's fault. And I'm not sitting here trying to advocate for communist country, but bro, it seems to me that Zelensky is the one that's trying to keep this going, and it's an unwinnable war, dude. And I don't know, but in regards to the U.S.'s role in all this, I did want to take a quick look at this clip with JD Vance. He had a little media gaggle as he was boarding a plane. I believe this is from either this morning or yesterday. I can't remember, but you can find it on X. That's where I found it. Let's take a quick look at this clip here. All right, I got this brought up. All right, let's.
To do it.
You said that you were optimistic the other day when you were meeting with Maloney about ending the brutal Ukraine-Russia war.
Yeah.
At this point, based on where negotiations are, what do you think is next in that process? And do you think that the U.S. should still hang on and take part in those negotiations?
Well, I'm going to echo something Secretary Rubio said, which is, look, we've issued a very explicit proposal to both the Russians and the Ukrainians, and it's time for them to either say yes.
Yeah, and that's what I was talking about, Secretary Rubio, how he was talking about, basically that the U.S. might have to pull out of these negotiations at this point. Yeah, we'll keep going.
Or for the United States to walk away from this process. We've engaged in an extraordinary amount of diplomacy, of on-the-ground work. We've really tried to understand things from the perspective of both the Ukrainians and the Russians. What do Ukrainians care the most about? What do the Russians care the most about? And I think that we've put together a very fair proposal. We're going to see if the Europeans, the Russians, and the Ukrainians are ultimately able to get this thing over the finish line. Again, I feel pretty optimistic about it. I think everybody has been negotiating in good faith, but it's now time, I think, to take, if not the final step, one of the final steps, which is at a broad level, the parties saying, we're going to stop the killing. We're going to freeze the territorial lines at some level close to where they are today. And we're going to actually put in place the kind of long-term diplomatic settlement that hopefully will lead to long-term peace. I'm going to take one more question before the kids start banging on the airplane windows.
So just to clarify, so you want the current lines of war in the war in Ukraine to remain the same under your proposal?
No, I didn't say that. What I said is the current lines, somewhere close to them, is where you're ultimately, I think, going to draw the new lines in the conflict. Now, of course, that means the Ukrainians and the Russians are both going to have to give up some of the territory they currently own. There's going to have to be some territorial swaps.
Yeah, that's what I've been saying. Like, we really need to, like, dude, let's stop this bullshit acting like both sides aren't gonna have to give up something. Like, somebody's gonna have to give up something. Otherwise, the slaughter, and that's what I'm gonna call it, a slaughter. The slaughter continues, dude.
I wouldn't say the exact lines, but we want the killing to stop. And the only way to really stop the killing is for the armies to both put down their weapons, to freeze this thing, and to get on with the business of actually building a better Russia and a better Ukraine. We're certainly invested in that effort. We hope the Russians and the Ukrainians will meet us halfway.
Yeah, so that was what the vice president had to say about all that. Yeah, he's right. At some point, y'all are gonna have to meet halfway, dude. Like, this war isn't gonna, like, business 101, bro. The best deal is like a deal where neither side is 100% happy with it. That's the best kind of deal, at least in business, and I can't imagine in diplomacy it's much different, but this shit's crazy, man. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments about the Ukraine war. Who's more in the wrong, do you think? Zelensky or Putin? Do you think that peace talks are even possible at this point? Let us know. We want to know your guys' opinion. We really appreciate your opinion, honestly. All my lovely, beautiful little wolf cubs. I love you guys, and I want your opinions. So, yeah, we're gonna leave it at there for now. Don't forget to follow us on X and Facebook. And you can subscribe to us here on the channel at Wolfpack Media 92. We will see you guys a little bit later tonight. But thanks for joining us, and we'll see you then. Peace.